to be perfect. I'm institute to music consistency. I'm also a music biologist and studies in IRiS. I'm a lifelong musician and listening to them. Even though I'm tonight, so I'm going to play as see. My the institute of music consistency there's interesting something or something and something about it. I said working with songs, some you see in places. I love the music the community, something the private. I love to pointing to talking about wedding. When it's a new family and the planet, so it's very good. Never now. I would like to the annual yeah, is really is
Is the first home by stars. Really, really incredible. I'm super excited to see their show. Tomorrow night, we'll also be here at Design Collective. This will be sort of like our dance night. So the idea that we can experience deep listening through our bodies as we dance and as we hear like a bass line and a kick drum. So Goucher Lustwork will be headlining that night. Goucher Lustwork is an incredible house DJ from New York who is really steeped in the traditional house music, but you sort of hear his fingerprints in a lot of kind of newer kind of house adjacent music. There will also be sets by DJ Boywife and Raw Time, who are two local DJs. Raw Time actually did all of the branding and all of like the posters and shirts. Saturday night, we'll be at the Woodward Theater. Headlining that night will be Laraji, who kind of needs no introduction. Elder statesman, legend in ambient and new age and experimental music. Open, and then as well, you'll also be playing with Maria Chavez, who I mentioned was a student of Pauline Oliveros, whose approach to turntablism has really, I think, opened up a lot of people's minds to what can be done with that as an instrument. She uses a lot of broken records, broken needles, incredible soundscapes that built on grooves and a turntable. It's really, really cool. And then opening that show will be Sherman, who is a really young, really engaging musician from Cincinnati. I'm really excited to have on the bill. And then we'll be on Sunday at the Contemporary Arts Center. Headlining that night will be Joy Guidry, who is a classically trained, conservatory trained bassoonist, who does really, really amazing ambient and noise, and as well as just like completely like, you know, rafter splitting free jazz. That will be preceded by Nisi Blues. It's another really incredible artist sort of in that milieu who brings together gospel, blues, ambient music, and kind of just sound design to create a really, really amazing piece of music. And then opening that set will be Davey Montgomery, who's here from Nashville, Leon Johnson, and Chaz Freeman, who Chaz is from Salt Lake, Leon's from Indianapolis, and this trio that I wouldn't say forced, but like no one's under here like under duress, but it's like I was like, you all need to play a set together. And so that will be opening the night. Other sort of non-totally musical, but like very connected to that is tonight we're having this discussion. Tomorrow night, before the sort of dance party, will be a screening of the Campion documentary, which is a really, really lovely look into an ongoing project that brings together people who are interested in collaborating and creating ambient music, puts them in the woods of the Pacific Northwest, and then comes out with this beautiful piece of ambient music that's kind of this sonic discussion among different people. And that will be followed by actually a performance by one of the Campion alumni and a bunch of ambient and kind of ambient adjacent artists called the Interspace Collective that will sort of be like slowly ramping us into like the dance portion of Friday. And then make sure if you're coming on Sunday, please come early between 5 and 7. We're having what's called an ambient jam. It is sort of a BYOH, bring your own harmonium. Anyone can come in, sit in, bring their own instruments. There'll be an instrument, and it's just going to be a 2-hour, very loose and like ambient jam. So if that's something that you're into or have never done that before, come and sit in and experience what it's like to like, drone out with some friends and strangers. So that's it.
Thank you.
And I have, oh yeah, and also I should plug this as well. If you would like to attend and haven't gotten a ticket, tickets at the door. We'll just ask to go out and around. Tickets are a sliding scale between 15 and 20. It's well worth it for the kind of caliber of music that you'll see.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Yeah. We're embedded within a music festival right now with lots of richness, so that's super exciting. So thanks again to Ryan for having the idea to collaborate. We've been talking about this for quite some time. The other thing about Alloys is that we sometimes want to collaborate with place too, not just topic and with a group like what is Sepulcher and Ryan and Paul, but also where we are. And so I just wanted to introduce Julia, who runs Design Collective, so that she can say a few things about where you are.
Yeah, for sure. So this Design Collective is started in 2020 by me and partner Mike. And we just kind of wanted to create a different creative environment that we to growing up on the West Coast. We're both from the Bay Area. So this feels very much like Bay Area, circa early 2000s, late 90s. It was a really great time for DIY and experimental, just anything. And it kind of gone from like this big funnel opening, kind of like narrowing it down to starting to figure out more and more of what we're doing, but keeping it open-ended. So you're actually sitting right now in the gallery. We do shows once a month. Right now, we're in the process of it. We just took out a show. We're going to be installing one. They're usually every month they're in a show. We like to show art that's British counterculture, rooted in street art, or people that are often not really seen in gallery, traditional gallery folks. And then we kind of in the back our workshop, we've also turned into our music area. And the way that we did that was that we had a show here, and the guy that was doing the installation of this TV wall actually, his friend came in and they were like, have you ever done shows here? We were like, no. And he was like, this would be great for shows. That would connect kind of works. So we've been doing music here since 20. At this point, we're probably in the 200s in terms of number of shows that we've done. Recently added our wonderful sound person, Raquel, so we have a sound engineer now. And our sound is just getting more and more professional, I guess, even though it's in a DIY space. We're going to start offering classes here that involve workshops with different artists that have shows. Anything from learning how to do your own character solving to storyboard your own comic, animate, how to sound engineer, all kinds of different stuff involved in what we do here. So I would encourage people to stay in the loop. We have an Instagram. It's just Design Collective without any vowels. We also have a website, same thing, we're on Facebook. And yeah, just that's the best way to figure out what's going on. And the music website, designmusic.com. If anybody ever in here wants to book music, you can go on there and request a book. Also, lists all the shows that are coming out. So it's a good way to stay on the pulse because we don't have consistent hours. It's basically like whenever something is going on, we're here. Our next art event is going to actually be on Saturday. So if you're not going to make it to the fest, you can stop in here. It's actually the biggest graffiti event in the crowd right now. This is going to be doing a release party here with Conquer, who is going to show his drawings and a lot of improving some of those around the wall, getting ready to be installed. So that would be on Saturday, and then after this big event that we are going to be downtown and doing afters here at the place. So just stay tuned. And there's my people in the window. But if you'd like to meet with either of us anytime about any questions you have.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is a space that I've been used for a variety of shows, gallery, exhibits, etc. It's always welcoming and a fascinating space. So.
I'm Mike. Design kind of small.
Appreciate it. All right, and while I'm hearing all this information, I'm also processing how much is happening sonically for us right now with the sound check and the street. So I'm going to give us some direction about how these conversations typically work. And then I'm actually wanting us to just maybe like quiet. They are meant to be conversations, but it would be fun to just listen to where we are. It's going to be behind us that we'll be talking over. So the IRiS Alloy series is, this is our 17th one. We've been doing them for the past several years. And they're meant to be what we call meetings, meeting of the minds and curious conversation. So we pick a topic that's related to sensing or perception or sensor technology development. We invite really different perspectives into this little central circle here. The conversation is really not meant to stay amongst us. And you'll notice that we chose not to be up on the stage because it's not meant to be a panel discussion that you passively absorb. So if you're in the audience tonight, we really want you to raise your hand, offer your perspective, ask a question, chime in with an anecdote, whatever you feel moved to share. When these conversations work well, the audience is speaking as often as the people that we've invited. So think of these folks here as being kind of seed crystals for our conversation. Okay. We don't have a destination. We're just going to let it go where it goes, and we never arrive anywhere. So one of the frustrating and exciting things about these conversations is that they leave you wanting to talk more. And we're going to need to end the conversation at some point because the music's going to start in the other room. But that's the point. The point is to take the conversation out into your life. If something's piqued your interest and you want to keep talking, certainly stay. We'll end the conversation. Yeah, the intention is to give you food for thought in your daily life. Okay. All right. Before I introduce the folks that are in the center here, should we just listen? All right. We could do that for a while. I mean, there's so many textures, right? And you know, if it starts to rain out there, the hiss of cars going past and stuff. Anyway, it'll be, pay attention to that. That'll be part of the conversation tonight. The street outside wants to be part of our conversation, I think. So, okay, I've already introduced myself. I'm going to do some very quick introductions, and then we'll get going on the conversation, just so you know who's here with us. I'll start with Fritz. Fritz Pate here. How's it going? He's a musician and composer, and the variety of instruments that you use to create sonic tapestries, fabrics is really fascinating. So I think you up that music making from a listening standpoint is my impression.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you speak on that?
No, yeah. I was like, well, good. Hold those thoughts. I'm just going to do quick, like 1 or 2 sentence introduction. So, Owen Hopper, also a musician, also a sound artist, working a lot with recorded sound, field recordings, etc., and also more recently, really investing in thinking about deep listening as a practice, right? So maybe you'll have some things to share about that as well. You and Juliana have been doing some deep listening workshops and sessions too, so great. Matt Hagood is a sound studies professor and musician of note, really thinking about how we interact with sound and technology, our sonic environments. Are we trying to get rid of some sounds? Are we trying to amplify some sounds in our daily lives, in our technological lives? All sorts of cool stuff there. Yeah?
That's good summary.
Great. All right, let's see if I can keep the streak going. Okay, so Juliana, you're a flutist, you're a composer, you're an educator, You're involved in a variety of ensembles, yeah, as well. And I couldn't really figure out where exactly geographically you're located because.
I just moved, so yeah.
Okay, are you here in Cincinnati or? Are you...
I mean, right now I am here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I just started teaching at Liminal, so I'm kind of back and forth.
Okay, great. So thank you. I'm glad that you're with us.
Yeah.
That you've spent time, it's clear, in Cincinnati, but also in Florida and in Illinois. And anyway, great that you engaged in a variety of projects around the U.S. And Brianna Matsky is a pianist and also involved in many different efforts here, including Concert Nova. Yeah, the new executive director of Concert Nova just finished a really important personal project called Tremor.
Yeah.
Is that
Still going.
going great? Okay, cool. So it's talking about an essential tremor that's part of your experience of and practice in music. So yeah.
The project I did before that was about Pauline Oliveros, actually.
Amazing. Cool. So deep dive. I'm the least qualified to be on there. Okay. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to start with a question, and then I'm not. This is not an interview. So the first question, which we can, as the Spirit moves you until you're the last one and you haven't spoken yet, and then the Spirit needs to move you at that point. So this can be very organic at the beginning. The question is. So deep listening has a definition, Pauline Oliveros' definition and concept, but it can mean very different things for different people. And maybe you don't have a formal relationship with that concept at all. So the question is, what does deep listening mean to you as a person, not Pauline Oliveros? And what does that look like in your work in the world? So whoever feels ready to say something about that, and then we'll just let the conversation.
Yeah, already. I think maybe the most basic way I could describe that would be, to me, it's always about two things, attention and intention. So it's about placing attention on things that maybe draws in the intent, right? And I feel like I've always been trying to do that. And then at a certain point in my life, I found Pauline's work, which helped inform some other ways I could go further with that practice. And I think it's artistically, I think it's pretty much everything about what I do, really. It's always about listening to what you've done, what you want to do internally, and making it come out in some way, listening back, right? I think also we're always all around us all the time. And I think we can put that intention into the attention, so magical things happen.
Here we go. Okay. So that was a beautiful answer. That's part of the reason why we had this collective silence after, because I was thinking about what you had said. But to me, deep listening is very much informed by how Oliveros defined it. A succinct way to say it is listening in every possible way to every possible thing. And so she defines the deep of deep listening as going in two directions. One is listening as deeply as possible to what you are hearing in that moment. But then the other way is actually an even more fascinating to me, which is to the resonances of what is happening in that moment throughout time and space. And I find that component of deep listening so meaningful and beautiful, because what it means is that you're not just listening to the things that are around you, but you're listening to everything that built up to that moment and everything that will come out of that moment. And when you listen in that way, you're listening historically and you're listening concertedly and intimately. And so to me, what's meaningful about deep listening in my own work is that when we learn to listen, when we learn to hear, we learn to listen, we learn to be compassionate. And so what's beautiful about deep listening is it helps build a better world. We're building a community by listening.
Owen, I
training or knowledge about Pauline's work until not that long ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, but for a long time, like the music I listened to and sought out was very sort of like intentional in its minute evolutions and movements within the pieces of music themselves, you know. It's fascinating, like listening to this music that felt like it was like growing and living and breathing, and it felt like listening to that was like important. And then discovering Pauline and some of her work, I was like, oh, of course somebody else has thought about this, you know. Yeah, I really like the thought of sort of contextualizing everything with the past and the future. I work in libraries, like professionally, public libraries, and a massive part of that, like the most important part of that, is compassion and contextualizing every person that comes in with whatever might possibly be going on in their life that has brought them into the library that day to do whatever it is that they need to do. And I think it's important and crucial to think about that and realize that.
Yeah, I'm just gassed listening to you guys. But I mean, it's like, and everyone keeps doing this like motion, and I don't know, for me, like, I mean, I've been, you know, in sound for a long time, but like, was not really like in sound, like, and really listening, I think. And somehow, like, this deep listening practice, like, grew roots into, I don't know, my life as a person and my life as a musician. So I did the deep listening training as like a multi-month online training. I did a couple years ago, and there's like this thing that keeps coming back about like imagining your roots tethering you to the center of the earth, and at the same time imagining like a string pulling you to a faraway star. And I feel like with my body just like resonant string, like ready to be fluffed, like with all this like beautiful sound in the universe. I don't know, like we're all connected to the same place at our roots and like to this, I don't know, greater cosmos. And I don't know. I mean, you know, it's like however much time we're spending like in our lives, like listening. I mean, sound is just awesome. Yeah.
This is when I have to urgently say something. I study media and I study sound in media, and so deep listening for me, it's really fascinating to hear like what it means for musicians. Because for me, it has a slightly different meaning, which is that I think all the time about all these technologies that we use to augment our listening or enhance our listening and control our listening. And in a lot of ways, those things have done those things. Like radio helps us listen really far away, or, you know, like the phonograph lets us hear the voices of the dead. Like these are all superpowers that our listening have now. And yet, I think there's like a lot of unintended consequences to our media devices and the way that we just live our lives. And we're actually worse listeners than ever because we expect to be in control of our listening. Like we just think music is something like tap water that we should just be able to turn on and decide how hot or cold it is. And so for me, Pauline Oliveros, that thing that you said about listening to every conceivable sound and in every possible way, that's giving up control. That's saying, oh wait, no, I'm not the master of the universe. I'm just part of this environment. Let me learn about it. Let me be curious about it. Let me be in touch with it. And then like those things that you guys were saying, it's almost like very Buddhist about like every sound has a history. Like there was a structure, there was all these things that had to lead to that sound. And every sound is kind of like an empathetic sympathetic relationship between us through sound. Those are really beautiful things that are all sort of like beyond our control, and that's the piece that I get from her.
Can we respond to that?
Absolutely, and the floor is open, so everybody can respond to everybody in every way. No, go ahead. Yeah.
So maybe I'm an overachiever, but I've prepared a little bit for this by like refreshing myself with some of my favorite Oliveros things. And she gave a TED Talk in Indianapolis one time, and I rewatched that the other day. And in that TED Talk, she talks about for her, when she thinks about deep listening in the context of music making, like deep listening is making music about more than just instruments and the voices. It's also a space in which the music is happening. And so she says this thing that really struck me. She says, if this world, in this world, all the like city planners and architects and engineers and all those people who build the spaces that we live in, if they all were deep listeners, the world would be such a better place to exist. Because they're taking sound into consideration in their building space, right? And so when you're talking about like, well, we have control over putting sounds into spaces, that's just what came from.
I think to also broaden it a bit too, we're talking a lot about Pauline's work specifically, but she talks about these three core facets of the practice, which are kind of the traditional listening with our ears, but also listening with our body and in our dreams. And I think the body work is so powerful because it's like, again, it's this thing that you have no control over. It's a lot of these things that are just happening, right? And it's sensations that you're not putting attention to all the time, but when you start doing some of the body work, and that was something that was always fascinating to me because I practiced Tai Chi and Qigong for a lot of years, and then finally kind of found this thing that wove all of the pieces together, and kind of listening to your body and what that really means too. While you can, focus on sound externally as well, I think they all tie together. Focusing on your body while you're creating sound has been kind of life-changing for me as a musician as well. And so I think that part of it is really interesting too, because it reframes the listening, right? Because it's not music listening anymore, it's like physical listening, which is so cool.
How many of you have a mindfulness practice? You do. You do.
Not really a overt one.
Yeah. You do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't have a structured mindfulness practice, but one thing that I is how I know I'm in a space, like how I reassure myself that I'm present. And I think it's gonna sound like this is gonna be so loud. Like people always ask me, Brianna, why are you typing so loud? Why are you slamming your windows? I don't realize I'm doing it, so I reassure myself that I'm listening to this.
Anywhere else, it's like the joy of this like planet is we have this sound environment. Like, if we didn't have that like centering on the breath that is like a core like tenet of so many mindfulness practices is the same medium we listen against. Like onto this like whatever breath of the universe or something. And I think that sound can be grounding, but like what you're talking about, like listening to the whole body is like, the difference between hearing and listening, that like attention to sense, to be in your body or to like really like be in your creative world, like noticing. I lost my train of thought.
Question. So this is for everybody, but like if you think about sound or if you think about deep listening, do you include internal sounds, imagined sounds?
Yes.
The sounds of your body, like somatic, it's called somatic sound, right? Like, do you think of that as sound when you're thinking about sound?
Yeah, and it's like one more real than the other, right? Like, is,
I think they interact.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, if your head's really noisy, you might put on some calming music or vice versa. Like, there's an interplay.
You know, I for too long played too much loud music too often, so I've got like hints of tinnitus here and there, and I like pay attention to that if I can whenever it kind of pops up. So it's like kind of here, you know, and I try and like stop and like focus on it.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but it like it's there obviously. Like I'm reacting to it. I should think about it.
And it reacts. It reacts to the spaces you're in. For most people.
Yeah.
Well, how does it react?
Well, I remember the first time I heard it, I was young, like 20, and it was right after a show, and it was like ringing in the same key that I was playing in. I was like, oh, maybe it's nice. Actually. And now it shows up when it's really loud. Like last night, during one of the sets last night here, it showed up, and I couldn't really tell if it was part of it or in my brain. Like it took a minute to sort of like focus on where exactly. Or it shows up when it's like completely quiet and it's like just me.
Yeah.
Then it's very easy to yeah. It's if I don't think about the implications of it, like 20, 30 years ago, it's kind of
It might be benign.
yeah.
It's probably fun.
It's probably fun.
It's interesting because I think oftentimes when I'm trying to listen with intention and attention, I try to quiet my sense as much as possible. But a lot of my listening will be in movement. A lot of my awareness, I'll be running, I'll listen to music, but sometimes I'll just run, and the sound of my own body when I'm not part of the sonic environment, as is the ambient sounds that I'm and it's not the case that I can't apply attention and intention to that experience either. But yeah, there is this like separate set of sounds that are internal versus external, and sometimes they kind of mix maybe in experience. But I'm curious about the musicians, how much of your own movement and sound making when you're making music, you're listening or attentive in that space.
That's a good question.
I don't know, and I come from like a classical background, and like I really felt like for so much of my life I was like not in my body while I was playing music.
All up here.
Yeah.
All up here.
Yeah. Which
Classical
does
music does that.
nothing good for the sound.
Yeah.
You know, it does nothing good for collaborating. And I don't know, it's a practice to get back to like sounding and listening at the same time.
When I perform, it's usually when I do stuff solo, it's sort of like I'm like constructing predetermined sections of things. You know what I mean? With like MIDI controllers and oscillators and stuff. Everything is predetermined. Just sort of telling it when to do the things that you do. So when I'm performing, I'm like just listening to make sure it's like sounding like I'm thinking it's sounding, which becomes frustrating if I'm like, I often will want to play and sort of in the audience so I can hear how it is being heard rather than what it sounds like on stage. You know what I mean? Or things that separate the like, performance aspect from it from just like what is being heard, and like that is I usually like want to play in the dark and just sort of like hunch over and like, figure things out. I am want to make it very noticeable when things go wrong. I played a show about a month ago and things were messing up, and the whole time I was just like, ooh. And people commented on it afterwards. This is fine, but where it was going.
I actually really relate to what you were saying.
Yeah.
So, you're asking about if there's any internal sounds that are part of musical performance. Actually, no. For me, like, finding my place, I'm a pianist and a classically trained pianist, and my place in performance, and really expressing and being musical is purely physically. It's almost like choreography and breathing and moving through time. And the sounds that come to me out of the instrument feed that choreography, but I actually feel like I'm consciously hearing very little. The sounds are hitting me in a physical way and guiding the next movement. And so I also really related to what you said about like wanting to be out of the audience at the same time, because and I think a lot of musicians relate to this. Like, we have no idea what we sound like in the moment, to be honest. And we need to record ourselves and listen back later, oftentimes much later, months later, so that we can sort of more objectively hear what it was that we were doing, because it's such a physical experience.
I feel like my musical practice has always been, and I'll be short because I want to hear the people, but I came from sort of improvised music was my earliest musical experiences, and I kind of entered this interesting crossroads of, like, I studied at the conservatory and studied kind of classical composition, but I played a lot of mostly free improvised music, which I think is the act of even just kind of engaging with that musically is all about listening, because it's all about reaction. So instead of it being prepared kind of observation, it's more reaction. And I think processes in both really yield good listening experience. Because when I entered, classically trained kind of curriculum later in life, and the most basic thing that anybody who's ever played an instrument has done, these good long tones, is really a study in deep listening. It's like, how does my instrument sound? And like, doing that, I'm still doing it. I've been playing, my instrument for decades now, and I'm still stuck on hearing like what a singer can do. So I think that so much about, but it's always grounded in like hearing and then returning and feeding back, and it's this play. I mean, I don't think any of us are particularly singers necessarily, so there's this object you're interacting with, there's this feedback that's there's a delay between what I want to hear and what's happening. So.
Maybe all for, but you also curious about your relationship with technology and listening, and also like your ideas of noise or unwanted sound outside musicians,
I think about sort of like the technologies that have increased our capability of listening. It feels like we, not to yell at clouds or anything, but like we kind of got to a point where there's this, I don't even know if it's a desire, but there's this bombardment of noise constantly, like sound and like advertisements blaring at you from every and to the point where like everybody, like Sony, you have their headphones in constantly, even like just 24/7, just like listening to something constantly that is inherently separate from them. That kind of thing really stresses me out. Like too much noise really kind of like crosses my wires in a bad way, that like shuts me down. But at the same time, the most physical I get in performance, like reaction rate, is when I'm doing free improv, like a noise set. And I think about that a lot. I never listen to noise music at home. I like couldn't.
Right.
But like going to see it perform, like engage with, and it's that intentionality.
And I sometimes wondered about noise, like how loud like it is on your body.
It feels very good. Like just like
Yeah,
full,
yeah.
like, attack on the gut.
And to do that for friends, like
It's great. Yeah, I've recently sort of like started doing kind of free improv solo movements again recently with like electronics. And it's exciting because I am not thinking about like the pre-planned things, and I'm not like following a script and hearing what I want to see. I'm just like reacting to what just happened and what I just heard.
It reminded me of a story I heard from a producer of an experimental music festival, and they've had like tons of noise artists over the year, and they were telling me that the noise artists, I can't remember what the primary example was. It might have been somebody who does like very extreme noise, and they were like, on his rider, he demanded an absolutely silent hotel room. I was like, that's amazing.
It's,
With regards to the noise and all of the sounds we have in our environment, you were speaking to music that we have sort of with technology. We have stuff going all the way back to the recorded music. Instead of Pauline Oliveros' idea of listening to your dreams, I think she talked about sometimes going into the silence because we have all these other people's musical ideas inside of us all the time. And how are we as composers or creative people or whatever we want to do, listening to our subconscious and what kind of wants to come out of us to be creative if we have all of these inputs all the time. And so that goes also with the dream work and stuff, listening to your subconscious, listening to things that are coming from outside of you or from another part of you that are like maybe hard to hear when you're awake. So if you can listen to your dreams and pay attention to these other things coming through your imagination, you can start bringing new sounds or rewrite them into it.
well, it's like you said earlier, the listening to things that have happened all the way through the beginning of time, you know, like none of the sounds any of us are making are created in a vacuum, you know, like everything comes from a little bit of something, you know, and it's cool to like kind of connect all those dots, even if they, well, especially if they come from dreams.
Yeah, I feel like through the deep listening practice, I like really connected with my daydreaming self. That I don't know, I feel like it's not really encouraged. You're not really encouraged to explore that in this society. I've done some like meditations on like listening to like the sound inside of your bones. That long ago mattered. I don't know.
The older you get, the
It might be.
I love this connection with daydreaming though, because you know many accounts of daydreaming are about the sounds. You know, it's like a removal of attention from vision, and then suddenly up come the sounds, right? It's kind of and it's interesting how the sounds can then become I guess what you imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, like some like framework to grab onto.
reminds me of like, there are historians who talk about how people used to hear the voice of God all the time and it was completely normal. And modernity kind of like squeezed that out of us. And part of it was, you know, so it's said that there's a visual bias to modernity and everything is that the eye is associated with rationality and the ear can't be trusted because the ear can be like all of these different ways that we divide up the senses and put them in a hierarchy. And sound is
Dangerous.
not as low as touch or something, but
that just reminded me of how precious silence is, actually. And it ties in with what you asked earlier about my relationship to noise. And like you were saying, you never listen to music, the noise music at home. I like hardly listen to music at all, ever. When I'm working, like writing emails or when I'm working, and a lot of people think that's super weird, apparently, but it's like, it's very peaceful. It's how I get my best work done. But it also makes me think about, I was very lucky to sort of stumble into my teaching job. I'm a professor at Wilmington College. And Wilmington is a college that was founded by the Quakers. I'm not a Quaker. There's still a lot of aspects of how we run our daily life at Wilmington College that are influenced by how Quakers worship. I'm not even a Christian, but it's you know, it's really a beautiful thing to see how they've integrated silence and listening into just how we interact with each other. So, for example, every faculty meeting. Now, if you know anything about academia, which I know you do, faculty meetings are notorious for being dramatic and full of egos and a lot of people wanting to like blather on about how important their stuff is. But we start our faculty meetings with a moment of silence. And the idea there is that you begin with this silence so that you can gather down and hear the voice of God that is within you. And you only speak if you feel that God is moving you to speak. And if we all are operating with that intention, then we understand when somebody else is speaking that we are listening to the voice of God coming through them. Now, even if you don't believe in God at all, that is such a beautiful idea and such a wonderful way of operating. And I'm really grateful for that practice. And it's the silence that's necessary.
Yeah. No, go ahead. So related that I with more, I find a lot of people that find silence the 5% is so around like noise that there's some people that when they are in silence they are hearing like or there's some people that cannot sleep if there's not like a sound in the background, they can't sleep. So how do you like everyone how do you work if you're listening, paying attention to the chaos, if you cannot handle the senses, let's like pay attention to the things.
I think that's partly why noise music is so popular right now, time because of the silence. It's like a cocoon. Sometimes from all the barrage, the other barrage, you get barrage in this specific way.
I'm wondering if any of you guys use like the noise canceling headphones while you're working.
I
Another
do
cocoon.
the stuff, but it's just because they sound good. Yeah, I like too much silence. I don't like. I think it's that centering thing, you know, like being able to put yourself in the physical space. You know, I like that.
I find noise canceling to be without sound accompanying to be stifling. Actually, it's very different as a physical experience for me to a quiet. But there's a spaciousness to it somehow. And noise canceling just feels like I'm getting smothered by a pillow or something like that. And so it's really interesting. I find it deeply uncomfortable to work with noise canceling headphones on with nothing playing through them. I would rather. What's that?
That's me.
That's you, noise canceling headphones with nothing?
Not playing the time.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time with that. But I don't know why. I feel like I want to feel like I want space to move, even if I'm not going to use it.
And there's like never a time to like, you know, like you can shut your eyes, you can't like shut your ears off, you know.
Has anyone seen the movie?
Long time ago,
He
yeah.
goes into this sensory deprivation chamber, and the idea is that he transforms into this alternate meaning, like how much of that is influenced by like lack of sound, and like us being able to hear something that we otherwise wouldn't. Or LSD, right?
That leads me to the wilderness, and something I really enjoyed or appreciated about the description for this alloy was the tagline of from the wilderness to the club, and just the diversity of sounds that we encounter as humans. And I keep thinking throughout this conversation, our capacity to acclimate to sensory changes are so subtle in nature. And for myself, when I spend time in the wilderness, I have this like decompression experience. It's so quiet at first. For like the first hours, almost it's like a little uncomfortable. And it brings up all this mind. In the wilderness, like we actually do for urban scenarios. And then after some days, I'm like, oh, it's actually really loud here. And that kind of like how the world turns up and turns down whether we have anything, any space to hear eardrums. The property of used to certain sounds in these settings to open up energy, different worlds to us.
You know, Oliveros said that we hear with our ears and we listen with our brains, right? And so that's what you're talking about is the process of the brain to, even though the ears are hearing the same thing.
Right, because like modern like you're talking about, it's like super loud. Like if you just arrived here, you'd be like, what is going on here? Like, oh, you're fine.
Also these expressions about quieting the mind. And I think one of the things that I'm reading from what you're sharing, that it's a shared personal experience, is the time spent in the wilderness quiets you. Suddenly you become quieter, and that's why other things are kind of pulled through and more noticeable. I know that when I'm in the middle of trying to get a bunch of things done, there's all sorts of sounds happening, and people even be talking to me, and none of it will make a dent. I haven't heard any of it until I quiet myself. I have to do this around my kids. I'm like up here with everything that I need to be getting done, but like I'm missing a moment, so I need to quiet myself. And it's interesting that we call it quieting when it doesn't necessarily have a real auditory component to it. That you were saying, like the mind noises or the mind chatter, we oftentimes language that as sound instead of something visual as a metaphor. I just wonder how much of our ability to experience sound or experience listening is about quieting some kind of internal noise.
I'm like thinking of like the shape of a sound wave, like versus stillness. I don't know. You know, like if that. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about how we are defined silence or I know you're a biologist and you presumably are studying listening and ways that music technologies will and non-human sound. I'm curious, I guess, like how our definitions of noise and silence offer something to associability or ways of thinking about thresholds of things rather than a strict definition between
patterns of different sounds and different sadness. And looking how you are thinking about the human
But yeah, like, I mean, even just like thinking about those like inside sounds, I mean, it's like I'm sure like if we were smaller, they'd be super loud. Like if our threshold of hearing was bigger, or, I don't know. Like I'm like if we could like live inside your veins or something, like it would be super noisy.
The sensory deprivation tank, but there's the story of John Cady going into the anechoic chamber and was listening to the sound of his nervous system of paralyzed without any sound. He was finally able to hear his body, so even in this supposedly silent state, you know, you could hear all these rhythms of the body. Yeah.
Never silent. There's always like some people silent. When you are private senses, you think about sounds, like sounds, like vibrations. Every time that one are drums, you can run like big fast and out of breath, you're going to like to hear. You're like, yeah, so you can experience noise, sound, and silence with your body too. And if you're like producing the kind of sound and kind of vibration, I think that connection to your never
Right.
you have to do that.
I think we should be careful about being completely silent because we're very capable of being completely silent in the way that we would destroy the word is biophony. And that's basically the sound of all living organisms. And if you check out Harvard Shaver, he's done tons of recordings of the environment. And, he has spectrograms of environmental recordings in the 70s that look way different than we now. Mm-hmm. And, we don't get that this place is cyclical and circular. Sooner than later, we might be in a silent state. So.
Well, there's so much replacing that sound with like the noise, that we're creating ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, there are birds in Brazil that mimic construction. But it sounds like construction can't be good for our own production, so I can't imagine it's good for the birds and the bees.
In biology, they use where they are. And some students have been they are changing the way they think. When they are nearby roads, when they are nearby community centers, when they are nearby airports. So they are changing the way they communicate, and that's creating a mismatch. Like they are trying to see in a non-right, but not all the brain has been a part of the same species. So it's like in some instances where you have a lot of sound workers, they cannot understand each other and they cannot recognize each other. And that's creating the species that we are not aware of. It's like, okay, we just had a road broken through a pond. But just as broken created now sound that's not yet just by the sounds. So our sounds are also changing how the payments understand sound, and they are trying to adapt and to that to all noise that they're
I think it's something in terms of the bigger ecosystem. The idea that, like, I'm not a scientist, there's, scientifically, like, might be loud humans, right? We've all done construction for the last, hour, and that's probably incredibly loud for, certain species that aren't adjusted to tuning that out, right? So there's the perceived, like, the way we live loudness is very different than the way it's measured, right? And I think sometimes we talk too much about, like, the way we perceive it, maybe, and how, oh, that doesn't feel very loud to me. hearing loss or something, right? Because there's the physical measurement of the room, I feel like is never talked.
Thinking about sound pollution and how this noise can interfere. Small changes in the behavior that is different, like, oh, maybe that person's not so well today, maybe they're doing something. Just like small changes and small changes in the sound behaviors. How like being aware of the things can increase, make the way that we communicate with each other better, that we can hear them.
I'm thinking of our participant colonize, right? So there's this book, Country Listening, and there's an indigenous person in this Portland trying to give the history of their people, why this land, why whatever the situation was important, and their way of keeping their like history, they keep the history through song. And so that is how they were communicating it in this program through stuff. And literally, like, they don't give it any value because of the way this like harmonic way, and for like 10 years is how they fix it in this sense. How they fucking noise, and I'm kind of like circling around a little bit, everybody's going back to and listening to guides and listening to our ancestors, and how that's been colonized out of us to be kind of still and like with their voices or things from their bodies. And then when you were saying more around our environment and our environment, the very beginning, I think I'm just like how words matter and we're using this like not just learn about something that can from this perspective is separate and like again colonized here sort of way of taking things in is that we need to learn from, and so that stillness and that becoming a part of the environment and not being anthropocentric, not even being biocentric, that you're only listening to the life of something, and it's like how rocks all that colonized or whatever, just decentrate yourself. Yeah. But how we listen to each other through this colonized lens. I love that you all are not sitting on the stage because it's not a position of listening in a certain way.
Well, we're actually, we're over an hour in. And I feel like we could keep going. Yeah. I think maybe we'll just kind of bring it back a little bit into the center for any things that feel like they still want to be said. And then again, encouragement to just kind of take this conversation out into the evening and into the coming days. But yeah, what are some things that caught ears, feel like they need to be shared?
There's one aspect of listening deeply that we haven't touched on yet that I want to make sure that I bring up, which is people who's every body has a different way of listening, and that includes people who don't listen in a typical way. And Oliveros would have celebrated that as deeply as any other kind of listening. And also conversely, the importance of listening for people who are deprived of one of their other senses in one way. So this project that you mentioned earlier, Tremor, I have the privilege of working with a composer for that project who wrote music for me, and she is blind. And it was really beautiful and interesting to talk to her about what sound means to her. She was born, sound is sight for her in a way. And the way that she sees is through vibration, right? And there was actually very little differentiation to her between physical vibration and vibrations coming in through your ears, and also continuing along that spectrum to the vibration of the universe and string, all one thing to her. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that is such a huge part of what we're talking about.
In case we don't plug it again later, but so Owen and I have been doing some deep listening workshops in Cincinnati. Our next one's in November. Just like if you want, we're just taking some emails on like there. Just, we're just gonna be like practicing some like listening in community. So, yeah.
I have a thing I can plug.
Sure. It's at the end, plug away.
Okay, all right. So Concert Nova is a concert series that I run, and it's coming Sunday at 2:00 at Rhine Guys, stuff in the event space. We're having a mindfulness session where musicians from the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra will be playing music and will be led by a mindfulness practitioner named Soulful. He's an ex-NFL athlete who had a career-ending injury and found mindfulness as a way to heal, and now he's bringing that to other people. So if you're into beautiful music and into mindfulness, that could be your goal. And if you talk to me, I'll get you a discount.
I don't think I have a plug, but I do want to bring up, I'm sure I'm playing a show at some point. You'll see me at some point if you want to. They're just, on this topic, there's a film that I saw earlier this year called The Two Thieves that was created by deaf and hard of hearing people. And I saw a screening of it in Knoxville, and they gave everybody beginning, and they told the audience to like hold it, because I guess this is the thing that happens in deaf communities when they watch films. They like feel the vibration through the balloons to sort of like make up that stuff. The film is this very, really beautiful, incredible, abstract thing about sound when you can't hear it as we sort of traditionally consider it. So there's a lot of really interesting playing with subtitles, like describing sounds that you can't hear traditionally. Yeah, just continuing this conversation of like listening beyond what you sort of expect come through your ear holes. Physical, like it's a full body, full thing. I think it's on PBS somewhere. Well,
Two Thieves.
the two starts with people dealing to this.
Excellent.
It's hard.
They're big. Those are big. I don't know how they did.
And Mac, you and I actually have something to plug, which I almost forgot, which is that October 26th, it's a Saturday. Do you remember the time we set for this? Saturday, October 26th, Mac is going to be leading, with some assistance from me, a listening walk through the sound walk through this neighborhood. So we think we're going to start over at Urban Artifact, maybe as our meetup point, but we're going to go to the woods. We're going to go to sonically distinct spaces in the neighborhood as a small group to listen to. October 26th. It's a Saturday. 3 to 4:30. 3 to 4:30. So IRiS is starting these field trips that are sensing and perception based, and this will be the first. This will be the inaugural IRiS field trip. Will be a sound/listening walk through the neighborhood of Northside. So that's coming too. Yeah. Anything else feels like it needs to be said now?
No, I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Good. Well, thanks to everybody. Thanks to the audience for your participation, your attention, your intention, your deep listening.
We thank the road too.
Absolutely. We'd like to thank performing artists, Hamilton Avenue, and the Design Collective sound check phase. If you enjoyed this, we do these now 4 times a year. We're going to do one on pain sensation, the experience of pain in after hours, the museum after hours in their new Advancing Health Gallery at the Cincinnati Museum Center. So if you've ever wanted to be in the museum after it closes its doors for the days, 7 to 9 p.m. on November 21st, we're going to be talking hopefully with an ultra marathon runner and a neurosurgeon and somebody suffering from chronic pain, and a variety of perspectives. Pain management, the experience of pain will be our next alloy. And more coming in the spring. So thanks again for being here. And feel free to linger. You'll hear the sounds of the show back there starting to ramp up in a little bit. But you're welcome. I think we have this space more or less for as long as we want to just continue to hang out. All right.